Okay, welcome back from the break. My name is Henri Ormus. I will be leading this panel discussion. I'm a nuclear engineer with 13 plus years experience in nuclear industry, so I have also prepared some questions for the panelists, but I urge you to think of the questions, and I'll ask a few questions in the beginning, and then we'll give you the possibility to ask questions what you want to know still. We have experts from Japan, Mr. Dr. Akira Yamaguchi-san, and we have Mr. Hideki MASUI from TEPCO, from the industry, then Kalev Kallemets, CEO of Fermi Energia, and Ms. Reelika Runnel from the Nuclear Energy Working Group. So maybe for the start, let's have a little introduction. Maybe you tell a little bit about your background, and how you ended up in nuclear. So maybe let's start from Reelika, from here.
Thank you, Henri. As Henri introduced me already, I'm Reelika Runnel. I'm currently working as an advisor to the Secretary General of the Ministry of the Environment, and I'm also a coordinator of Estonian Nuclear Energy Working Group. Well, from my background, I don't have like a special nuclear-related education. I have a master's degree in environmental sciences, and in addition I have a degree in economy and a diploma in radiation protection. So every specialist in Estonia, like me, in radiation safety and or nuclear safety matters is tailor-made. And we have received training abroad. Those most reliant training provider is International Atomic Energy Agency, which has provided our specialists short and long-term training courses. So I received my diploma in radiation protection actually in Belarus, in Minsk, where I studied in International Sakharov Environmental University. I know that some of my colleagues from Environmental Board have also taken this training course. Yeah, Margit. Hi, and there's a similar training course conducted in English in Greece as well. And my good colleague from the Ministry of Environment, Marili, has taken this training course. My interest in nuclear affairs started actually back in 2008 when I started working for our regulatory authority. During that time it was Radiation Protection Center. Now it's Environmental Board's Climate and Radiation Department. And in 2008 I started there as a radiation protection officer. And during that time Estonia also had an ambition of going nuclear. At first we were planning to build our own small nuclear power plant, and later on it developed into a plan to participate as an investor in the Lithuanian Visaginas project. But this didn't materialize, but I still remained interested in nuclear technologies, and continued reading those materials, etc. And in 2011, I took a position in Ministry of Environment in Climate and Radiation Department, and continued at the more international level, this nuclear affairs studies and interactions, and started to develop Estonian policies and legislation on all matters related to, even slightly related to radioactivity, starting from radon to security-related matters and non-proliferation. In 2017, I was posted to Vienna to our permanent mission to the International Atomic Energy Agency, where I was responsible for coordinating Estonian chairmanship in the European Union. And my second posting to Vienna was in 2020 until February this year, and where I served as a board member to the International Atomic Energy Agency, and I was posted again to our permanent mission there in Vienna. There I dealt with nuclear safety and security and non-proliferation matters. And during that time, Estonian nuclear energy working group was also formed, and I took a position of the coordinator in this working group. So altogether, I have 14 years of experience in this field. Thank you.
Thank you. Kalev.
Yeah, my interest also developed in 2008 when Estonia was considering nuclear energy, and I did my master's thesis about listing government-owned companies, and Energia was involved in the Lithuanian project and learned in Technical University of Munich nuclear economics. Then, like, skip a few steps, then I was involved in Ministry of Economic Affairs in forming Estonian Geological Survey and was its deputy director. And but in that time, I finished my PhD about Estonian oil shale industry, and I realized that because of the climate change and the decarbonization effort of European Union, that that road comes to an end on fossil fuels quicker than many people believed. And we realized with Henry and our team that SMRs are an option that has to be seriously pursued for energy security of our country. And we were absolutely right to do so, and we started the company. And yeah, I finished my PhD on oil shale, and so I'm an economist by training. Thank you.
Thank you. MASUI-san.
Okay. I have 33 years of experience in the field of nuclear power industry, and that means I joined TEPCO, Tokyo Electric Power Company, 1989. And at that time, my major was environmental engineering. I am from actually the western side of Japan. So the local power company is Kansai Electric. And since I was a child, I had a very strong desire to find a job in the infrastructure industry. So I applied for my job application to the Kansai Electric, but they turned down my application. So at that time, then I consulted with my thesis advisor. Why don't you go to the Tokyo Electric? That's a big company. Probably you can. There is some space for you to join. And successfully, I got a job at the Tokyo Electric. And I clearly remember when I had the job interview, I said my main interest is work in thermal power division. I don't have a slightest interest in the nuclear power. But, against my will, they assigned me to the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power station. And before that, I have never stepped any single step in the Fukushima prefecture. And it's very far away from my point of view at the time. And it's very, very rural area, and I felt discouraged. But, when I entered the Fukushima Daiichi 2 weeks after, and one of my instructors took me to the turbine building, and it was operating very big sound. So at that time, our instructor said, this is a nuclear power plant. This is how we make money and deliver the power to the Tokyo metropolitan area. So since then, I am become gradually intrigued by the nuclear power. And here I am, it's 33 years. And from the 1994 to the 1996, I had a chance to get a scholarship from the TEPCO, and I had a chance to study nuclear engineering in the United States. It's called MIT. And I have experienced various jobs like a chemical control, waste management, and risk assessment. Right now, I'm taking the position called Deputy Chief Nuclear Officer. My responsibility includes long-term planning of the nuclear power and also the human resource management. Okay, thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Yamaguchi-san, please.
I am a little embarrassed because those guys are talking a lot. I have very, actually, probably I'm the oldest guy in here. I graduated from the University of Tokyo Department of Nuclear Engineering, so really nuclear engineers, in 1979. And then continued to research in the university, and in the university, I studied the fluid structure interaction. Yeah, it's a really important issue in the nuclear because the primary system and the primary flow have the interaction in case of the normal operation as well as the accident situation. And in 1984, I received a PhD degree and then started to work at the power reactor and the Nuclear Fuel Cycle Development Corporation, long name. And the abbreviation is PNC. P stands for power reactor, and N, nuclear fuel cycle, and corporation. And at that time, worldwide, first reactor is a very attractive reactor type. In the United States, they have the Clinch River breeder reactor project. In Europe, the Super Phoenix reactor in France are almost in starting the operation. And in Japan, we have the Monju reactor. So at the PNC, I studied the safety analysis and the thermohydraulic analysis of the first reactor. And then I started to do the probabilistic risk analysis of Monju reactor because the regulatory body required PNC to complete the PRA before starting the operation. That is the homework. So I have to do within a limited time. And fortunately, we completed that. And after that, my supervisor told me, oh, you can do the seismic risk analysis because I studied the fluid structure interaction in the university. So you understand structural mechanics as well. Not at all. But anyway, so I'm involved in the seismic risk analysis. And that time, in the United States, they are doing the PRA, seismic PRA, especially in California state. Because in California state, they have a lot of winery, right? And in a winery, sometimes earthquake occurs, they are expensive wine, broken. So they want to fix the systems at the cheapest cost. So they developed the methodology for the seismic risk analysis, and they applied to a nuclear power system. So it connects the wine and the nuclear power plant. Then after that, I moved to Osaka University and then the University of Tokyo. So my career is really the nuclear field. Okay, and this March, I retired the University of Tokyo, and currently I am a director of the Nuclear Safety Research Association. Thank you.
Thank you. Very interesting backgrounds. Nice to hear. So let's continue in Japan. So how is the support, public support in Japan now for the nuclear, especially considering the Fukushima accident and how it's been before and after? So who of you would like to answer?
Maybe I will answer. I continuously check the public opinion survey by some private sector, and they ask the people which energy source is most important in a Japanese system. And before the nuclear accident in Fukushima Daiichi occurred in 2010, the nuclear is fourth position: solar, wind, hydro, and nuclear. But the next year, after the Fukushima Daiichi accident, it's seventh position, right? But recently, it's recovering, and a very recent survey last year, 2021, it said the nuclear is the sixth position, but still not so good enough. But I'll show you another number. They are asking if the nuclear power, nuclear energy is necessary, needed, or not needed. And in 2010, 77% of people said yes or almost yes. Mm-hmm. And 2013, to only 25%. But the last year, it 53% again. Yes, so I'm sure that the public opinion is more and more positive to nuclear. But actually, in these 5 or 10 years, the situation is too bad. Yeah, that's my first information input.
What do you think is the main reason that it's becoming more positive again? Maybe
Masui-san.
Masui-san, maybe
Okay.
you can
I think,
add.
well, some of the statistics Dr. Yamaguchi talked about is new to me, actually. And I realized, because it is my understanding that right after the Fukushima accident, and we have lost completely public confidence. And things are probably changing because right now we are having difficulty in terms of the supply of the power. Of course, last month we are also having difficulty supplying the power, and in the Tokyo area, we are almost close to a partial blackout. So that means that people are thinking about electricity is a necessity. So one of the reasons behind that is we do not have sufficient nuclear power back online yet. So I think that one of the reasons is there will be supporting factor for the nuclear power. I think the people's attitude from the different what happens and surrounding the public people, I guess.
Thank you. Yesterday we heard from Sandor's presentation that in Estonia the support for considering nuclear is 68, and from Reelika's presentation there was another survey, it was something 50, 59. So now question to our Estonian colleagues here. What do you think, what is the reason of that rather high or maybe it's low support? Reelika, maybe what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the very high support of Fermi Energia survey in January was definitely a result of very high electricity prices at the end of the year, which helped the people to realize that we need electricity production units of our own, and to get electricity with a reasonable price, and we cannot solely rely on the import of electricity. We conducted a survey in February, and the result 59% is a bit lower, but still it is very, very high. Consider that Estonia don't have any prior experience with nuclear energy, and well, the reason why it was slightly lower than in Fermi's questionnaire is that we formed our question slightly different. So if you're asking the support to the small modular reactors, we asked whether they would support the use of nuclear energy in Estonia in general. And against nuclear energy, there were only 22% of people. 19% didn't have a clear opinion. And this is our focus group with whom we will have to do some work, and they can be persuaded towards nuclear, or they can decide that this nuclear is not for us. So they haven't made up their mind. But the one interesting thing that came out from our survey was that we also asked that from people, do they consider themselves to be familiar with the working principle of the nuclear power plant? And almost half of the Estonians replied that yes, that they are familiar. And then 48% consider themselves knowledgeable on the working principle of nuclear power plants. And but at the same time, yes, they were worried about the spent fuel management issues, etc., and the risks of having accidents there. And as same as in Japan, in Estonia, actually, the highest support is to wind energy and to wind. And the solar power, it was a bit different story in Fermi's survey, I believe, that it was in your survey in January, since the weather was cold and the sun was not shining, the support was in decline as well. But in our survey, those the support to solar and nuclear were almost equal, actually. And the nuclear power was on a third place.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Kalev, what's your thoughts? What are, in your opinion, the most important factors there to kind of create this opinion?
Estonian society, despite that we are 1.3 million people, it's actually more people than in this room. So there are many opinions in the society, but everybody pays. Everybody deals with money. Everybody has to purchase, pay, and receive income to survive, to live. And so everybody is affected by the prices. And even the prices today are close to 150 euros. Even in May, when we have warmer weather a little bit, then not very much, but warmer a little bit than in January. So the inflation for second quarter was 19%, so unprecedentedly high. And unfortunately, I made a presentation to Estonian National Bank, like long presentation about this century, and looking very strategically, I believe that the inflation will be elevated throughout the century because of the climate change impacts will emerge over the coming decades only. When it comes to food security, food supply, but also other industrial supplies, they will be very seriously stretched. So I think that the economic argument for nuclear has been the strength and will continue to be the strength fundamentally of that energy source. But of course, at the same time, the underlying element is the awareness, or how to say, the level of educatedness about different energy sources. And that discussion is, also evolving in the society. There are, of course, in our open society, which is a little bit different than our common neighbor. We have a democratic debate, and there are obviously different voices and public discussion. And what is apparent is clear that there are some drawbacks when it comes to fossil fuels. There are commitments, I think, from the younger generation to decarbonization. By the older generation, the commitment is stronger on the energy security. And also the, let's say, the medium sector of the society is the one that is most impacted by the, I wouldn't say Fukushima, but definitely Chernobyl event is what is like the strong mental impact for Estonian society, and especially for the, let's say, Russian-speaking part of the society. So they're a little bit living in that trauma. So these are the realities of Estonian societies, and so it is quite okay that we have different opinions.
Thank you. Well, next question is to everyone from the same direction. So what is, in your opinion, most important things that need to be done, or what are the key factors to have the strong public support and public trust in nuclear energy? Let's start from Yamaguchi-san.
Okay. Actually, the 2011, just it is a turning point. And before that, in Japan, we have the nuclear renaissance era. So people are very happy to extend the nuclear activities, and more reactors are expected to be constructed. But let us take a look back to the 30 years ago or 40 years ago. We remember the 3 Mile Island accident in 1979 and the Chernobyl accident in 86. After that, the global warming or a climate crisis that promotes the nuclear and the renewal. Then the nuclear renaissance era comes again. And after that, Fukushima Daiichi nuclear accident. And again, presently, the people are so concerned about the energy security. So we have very positive support from the public to make sure we can obtain the nuclear stably at the cheap price. And when we considering this history, it is repeating. Nuclear is pro and con and pro and con again and again. So I think the important thing is to open or to disclose every aspect of the nuclear characteristics, not only the advantage, but also the disadvantage. Usually, when we are very happy with the nuclear expansion age, we mostly say, okay, nuclear is provide the electricity at cheap price, and it contributes to increase the self-sufficiency of energy in Japan. Why don't you look at the oil shock in 1970s? But we should have also at the same time talk about the negative aspect that is a risk from the accident and so on. So we need to obtain the public support stably. And to do this, I think that we should show the every aspect or present most recent our understanding about the nuclear advantage and also the risk disadvantage to let the public consider for themselves. Yeah, that's a point in the next decades. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Good. Thank you, Masui-san. Your thoughts?
Okay, about the gaining the public support is TEPCO is suffering quite a lot because TEPCO is the operator which caused the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear accident. So sometimes not sometimes, frequently the question is raised: is TEPCO still entitled to operate nuclear power because they are the company which caused the nuclear power accident? So what we are trying to do is almost some of the part is the same as Dr. Yamaguchi's answer. We would like to open what we are doing right now. We are not hiding anything. Almost all the data or event is really put on our corporate home pages. And also, as I explained in my presentation, we try to develop the risk communicator, which is a specialist for the communication. Again, the primary function for the risk communicator is not really persuading people. It's listening to the people and sympathizing the worry and or concern that people may have. So we would like to build the better relationship with the people, and eventually I hope we would like to build a very strong tie with the public. And finally, we would like to lead this created trust between the people and TEPCO, lead to the restart of our plant. Yes.
Thank you. Kalev, what about your ideas? What's important?
Well, there are many things, but I would say this, what is my personal, and what we try to do as a Fermi Energia is that in the end, who you are matters a lot. So you have to, also as a person, and as a company, and as a nation, you have to be able to define and set your values strongly, and then act based on those values. And it's a difficult thing to do, but we have defined for Fermi Energia 3 values that we try, at least, to based on which to work. First is based on science, like the name of Fermi Energia, that we are based on science and not fiction. And we try to research very thoroughly the knowledge based on which we make our decisions and commitments. Second, really openness, that we are explaining everything as much as we can and consistently and continuously. And third is serving Estonia. I mean, this is our nation. This is sacred to us, to our language, our independence. And our company goal is to serve Estonian nation, its independence, continuously and forever. So this is, of course, always, and your also identity. We Estonians have the experience of our identity being challenged consistently by our dear neighbor. So you have to live up to that challenges also in Estonian society to your identity, and you have to prove yourself again and again and again. And so this is how I personally, and we have discussed that with the co-founders, that we try to operate and work and develop trust towards what we do and nuclear energy in general.
Thank you. Reelika?
Thank you. Well, most of the important aspects of how to improve this public perception has been mentioned already. I completely agree that this open communication is vital, and it's relevant to find maybe some spokespersons or who are trustworthy and can explain this science-based thing in a simple manner. And this goes with the nuclear energy as well. And this someone who's trustworthy, who is an opinion leader in the country, that will help a lot. And well, educating the members of the public on the topics of nuclear energy is vital, and to alleviate some of those fears that people have. But at the same time, I completely agree that we should openly speak about those cons of nuclear energy as well, to show that we are not hiding anything, and we are not painting a picture only in bright colors of this nuclear energy. We have to acknowledge the fact that there are risks, and we're going to have to face them, and we have to deal with them. From the government side, I have to admit that on the communication level, we haven't been so successful as we have hoped. Luckily, as Fermi Energia is doing a lot in this area, but I'm happy to announce that finally Nuclear Energy Working Group has found a communication partner as well, and we are developing a communication strategy. So we are making improvements. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Maybe any questions from the public? Yes, can we have the microphone, please?
Hi. The technology-wise, small standardized reactors are about 70 years old, and we saw multiple cycles of commissioning and decommissioning. The nuclear power stations quite old. Today, we are changing the economy from the resource-intensive to the energy-intensive. And we can replace, for example, gas, which is CO2, climate unfriendly and expensive, and our neighbors are not very helpful in that case, to the energy. The SMR technology allows nuclear power core not to be viewed as the large national project, but as a private enterprise. And speaking from a personal experience, I know what a private responsible enterprise does a better job than unresponsible state. But what's your opinion in terms of legislation? Because in Japan, the nuclear industry is very centralized and controlled by the government. In Europe, we see more decentralized economy. So what will be the preferred path, in your view, from your experience, and in your view as building the new experience, what should be here? Very centralized national project or decentralized business opportunities?
Maybe.
Yeah, Alexander, you raised a very, very, very important question. And I'm very happy to explain a little bit my view. Indeed, reality is that 20th century was different than 21st century. It was very centralized, government-led, and nuclear objectively was large in that era. And we obviously in the 21st century, we coming from the 20th century. So we have the heritage from that era. We have the people from that era. Me too. So we to some extent, those government-led companies are going to continue. In Czech Republic, CEZ is going to continue, and it's going for large reactor. EDF is going to continue with large units in France. But you are correct, small modular reactors, they create the opportunity for private capital-led. But even so, in Estonia, we would, I think it is correct to pursue with private capital. We cannot escape the government. We cannot escape also the government-owned capital. So we are actually quite pleased of having Vattenfall, 100% government-owned company, as our shareholder. Yesterday, I had a very good conversation with the CEO of Latvenergo, which is also a government-owned company. And so the cooperation is there, but I would say, I really honestly think, looking how badly, really, really badly, French nuclear energy is managed, horribly badly. The capacity factor is really bad, like Russian army, bad. You know, the capacity factor for this year will be 54%. It's horrible. It's a major discrediting for nuclear energy by the largest country. But, you know, there are some unique characteristics to that. But there will be difficult dynamics. So I do see also how, let's say, the government-led projects in Poland are taking very long. In Finland, there is privately led, but deployed with French technology, why it took so long. So there are some advantages of private capital, but we cannot escape the gravity of the state, so to say. So we always are in a kind of some kind of a relationship. Nuclear energy will always be with some certain kind of relationship with the government, but the private capital will be at least enable some more dynamics into the energy space. And this is the dynamics that I believe is needed, and private capital can obviously, and that is universally recognized, we need to deploy the vast scale of private capital. We cannot be reliant on the public capital only to deploy, to execute the decarbonization in a global scale that is needed.
If I may correct a little bit the question, not the answer to the question. Will we escape?
Microphone.
Will we escape the governmental influence that's in hand of the parliament and the government?
No.
Should we? That's
No.
the question. No.
There has to be democratic oversight. But there has to be role distribution. So in Estonia, we have unfortunately the situation in energy space where government is, let's say, football parallel, is both the referee, owner of the club, both teams on the pit, but also the public. So this is not a very good situation, not very competitive situation. So we should move away from the kolkhoz situation that we have in Estonian energy landscape.
Thank you. Any comments from, please?
Okay, you are right. On the looking back the development of history of nuclear power in Japan, it has been pretty much centralized. So the government thinks, okay, next type of the reactor, this one, okay, we'll put the money, and why don't you cooperate with that project? That's right. But recently, things have been changed. And there was a short presentation made by the METI people, and his government, the promoting organization. And one of the slides is dedicated to the NEXIP program. That is basically the supporting program for the new nuclear power plant, new type of the reactor. But what they are saying is we are not really pick up a single type of reactor, let's do it. No, this is not, they have abandoned this attitude. What they are thinking that we are making the best use of the private sector's ability. But the situation right now is that the private sector is losing its power because of our primary, our primary interest right now is the restart of the current power plant. And back to your question, if you think which one is preferable, in terms of my personal opinion, decentralized is much better. But right now, under these circumstances, we cannot really seek the decentralized because we are financially strapped, and introducing a new plant we need a huge investment, and nuclear power is becoming a little bit risky business because initially you need a huge investment. Okay, sometimes the construction period will become prolonged, and later that you can start to recover your money. But it was okay for us because at that time, back then, the Japanese market has been regulated. So whatever money we spend, we can recover in the later on. But right now, completely market is deregulated. So we need some support of some system so that we can recover at least the initial investment.
Thank you. You wanted to add, Yamaguchi-san?
Yes, maybe Masui-san is from industries, utilities, so I may have the different view. And in Asian countries, the countries which have the successful nuclear industry are China and Korea. And both of them, government take the leadership in a nuclear program. And but, however, when we think about the new reactor, just now Masui-san explained about the NEXIP. NEXIP is a next generation reactor plus innovation program. And in this situation, what we should do is not only the development of the reactor, but also we have to develop the system, regulation, and also the grid line connections, and so on. So my opinion is that if the technology is matured, private sector could take the leadership. But if it is a new reactor, the government has to take some responsibility because other many social systems have something to do with the reactor. And currently, many countries, United States, are interested in a small modular reactor. Why? Because the small modular reactor initial investment is smaller. But I think it is wrong. Small modular reactor is a new type, right? So the government have to take something to do with that. But the small modular reactor idea is that initial investment is small, so the private sector can handle it. Why? That's why small modular reactor. But I think it is opposite. Small modular reactor, we have to work together with the regulators and the industries and the utilities and the researchers because everything is new. So that's my opinion, and it depends actually.
Thank you. So we had back there a question and then in the center.
Thank you very much. I go on from the Kalev's comment that he likes market approach. So maybe Reelika or others can explain what's the situation on the Estonian market. Is the Fermi one company who's interested in building a plant, or are there any others? And the second part is that why public should trust company who has maybe 5 years experience. And we have TEPCO, who has done maybe 50 years running the plants. So maybe TEPCO is also interested in building a plant. So maybe you can a little bit explain the market situation in Estonia and the choices that the governments and companies have. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, to be frank, it's not completely in my mandate to comment on this market side of energy sector from the government's perspective. I wish someone from Ministry of Economic Affairs and Communications would be here. But, well, in my opinion, yeah, at the moment there are no competitors to Fermi Energia, but it cannot be ruled out after the government has adopted a positive decision on nuclear energy. And it might be that there are other companies who have vast experience, decades long, would be very much interested in becoming an operator and developing this nuclear power plant themselves. But then the strategy, how to go forward with this, is up to the government to decide whether there's going to be if this procurement procedures, etc. But at the moment, as far as I know, the government has no interest to develop a state-owned company for nuclear purposes at the moment. So the government also sees that this, as much as possible, it should be done by private sectors and with private sector's funding. And just like my Japanese colleagues mentioned, that this smaller reactors, the United States sees it, that's the smaller risk to the investors. So,
Thank you. Anyone wants to add?
I would describe the reality in Europe a little bit. In Finland, which is 6 million nation, there are 2 companies, Teollisuudenvoima and Fortum. In Sweden, there are 2 companies, Uniper and Vattenfall. In Federal Republic of Germany, there are 2 operators of nuclear power plants left. In Republic de France, there is 1 operator. In Czechoslovakia, Czech Republic, there is 1. In Slovakia, Slovenské elektrárne. In Romania, there is 1 nuclear electrica. In Bulgaria, there is 1. And Slovenia, there is 1. In Spain, there are 2 companies. And in United Kingdom, there is 1 company. So the picture is such that there are not too many companies.
Thank you. So there was a question in the center first. Microphone, please.
The Kalev said that, and Uniper is owned mainly by Fortum.
Yeah.
It means they have 3 in Norway.
Okay, the question then from the center.
Yeah, Andres from Geological Survey, and I would like to go further with the previous question actually, and then rephrase my yesterday's. Small modular reactor is probably a really good choice when you have a working environment for the nuclear power. But given the fact that Estonia is starting this path, maybe, and we are starting from the scratch, we have to do everything, and as we heard today and yesterday about the safety, about the security, and about the regulation authorities, and the principle that whoever does and whatever does, the state is responsible. So if we think from that point of view, so is it worth of thinking for this 300 megawatt of small reactor? Or maybe we should think a little bit bigger already from the start? Because we are 1.2 million, but we are connected to the network in the Northern Europe. So, thanks.
Thank you, Kalev, I guess.
Yes, more. There is good example of another country that has started, not a fully democratic, but more complicated, United Arab Emirates, which is also in a rather complicated security situation. Also has difficult neighbors. And they made the decision to proceed. And They have completed 2 reactors that are operational, 2 reactors that are coming to be operational, and a successful experience this century, how to start, like you say, from scratch and to execute well with good discipline, with good carefulness, with good cooperation with reliable partners, and well, yes, with Korea this time, not Japan, unfortunately.
So, actually, I would add or ask an additional question to the Japanese colleagues. You know, in your country, in Japan, in recent decades, there were several nuclear power plants which have been actually built in schedule in a quite reasonable time. Maybe you can share some experience or recommendation to us how you managed to do that and why maybe other countries have not managed to do that.
Oh, you mean the construction? I mean
Construction time to be quite short in 4 years.
And as Mr. Hattori explained, the construction period comparison among the other nations, and Japan has a very good record. In my opinion, there is a 3 factors behind that. First is improvement of construction method. For example, our last construction project was Kashiwazaki Kariwa Unit 7, and that area we have lots of snow during the winter. So the construction company came up with the idea of covering the entire site with a tentative roof so that they can minimize the effect of the heavy snow during the winter. That is one way of one example. Another example, what they call the modular construction methodology. Modular construction methodology, first you have to find the free space on your site. And the people are working and some of the modules, like a main control room, and you don't have to put the main control room unit one by one. You have to create a prefabricated main control room, and it will be taken by the huge crane and into the service building. So that means, in other words, it is called the parallel working technology. That's one way of doing that. And the second reason behind that, I think, is the adjustment capability. The construction project is very complicated. So every time we have the daily meeting, so something happens. Sometimes it's minor, sometimes it's major. So there should be some people who can adjust the work schedule, and also for example, why don't you wait your work for 2 days? Okay, well, let's proceed this one first. So that is very important. This role has been taken by the utility people. Mm-hmm. The third one is because from the later 1970 to the end of the 1990s, we have lots of construction ongoing in Japan in parallel. So the people's knowledge and experience has been accumulated. Mm-hmm. And 3 years ago, we had one of the very prominent engineer left TEPCO because of he reached retirement age. He has a huge, lots of the construction experiences. And I asked him, write down the textbook for the people who is succeeding him. But he said he cannot really, because most of his knowledge is implicit knowledge, not really explicit knowledge. Explicit knowledge you can turn into the textbook, but implicit knowledge is really not. So on the flip side, we have the construction project. It's called the Higashidori. Its progress rate is 10%. Right after the Fukushima accident, we have suspended the construction work. And we are going to restart that, but however, it's been almost 25 years back since we have last finished our construction project. So I have actually the worry and concern about can we really do that on time?
Mm. Yeah. Thank you very much. There was a question in the public. I think we are out of time, so last question probably.
Thank you so much. I'm interested in price projections, market and business plans. We have heard several times also today that nuclear energy is cheap, but we also heard that in a deregulated market, revenues could not be guaranteed anymore. And if we take into account that Nuclear power is not developing in vacuum. At the same time, for example, here in the Nordic region, huge amounts of money go to renewables and renewable technology. And by the time in Estonia a nuclear power plant is actually operational, we don't really know how many offshore wind parks are already working. So I acknowledge that for some months of the year there is not enough wind or solar, but the nuclear plant will function all around the year. So how does this nuclear power come into the market during the rest of the year when there is probably an overflow of very, very cheap renewables?
Thank you. That is a very good question that we had also beginning of this year, and that we analyzed with the largest company selling power in the Baltic market that is called Energia. And we analyzed indeed different scenarios, how much wind and solar capacity could be on the market. And with 600 megawatt, we would come at, even if we would do some curtailment, at 88% load factor and a very competitive price. And one element that we are definitely going to do is power purchasing agreements for 15 years at fixed price. And we know that because what you mentioned, wind does not blow all the time. The real capacity factor on Estonian onshore wind, which is cheaper than offshore, onshore wind reality is 28%. 28, well, which is not 100. So to get to 100, you need how much more? 72% more. So, which means that much of the time when you have a fully wind PPA and you're selling to company, let's say A. Le Coq or Saku, then most of the time you had to buy to provide to the customer every hour, every day, the power that you have been selling with the PPA. You have to buy from the spot market. And spot market is expensive if you're not producing yourself, because the wind is blowing at the same time. So we know for fact from customer exchange, from customer information, that the wind PPAs, even if they are subsidized by taxpayers, even if they are subsidized, because they have to buy from the spot, that in the Baltic market, the PPAs are at 72, 74, and we are aiming at 55. So we are competitive. We know customers are interested. Large industrial customers are interested. We can't offer, unfortunately, that price to everyone, because when it comes to PPAs, there is also element that is called counterparty risk. So we are only offering that right now and discussing that with the customers, including the government, who are consuming more than 2 gigawatt hours. And they do have a profile, consumption profile, that is in the TSO, Estonian TSO. So we're working on that element, and we know that there is also interest in the Latvian and Lithuanian power consuming market to have really reliable all the year supply at a fixed price, which unfortunately other even wind projects cannot offer, because they still have a lot of time, hours a year, thousands of hours a year that they have to purchase on the spot market, where you have high uncertainty regarding the fuel prices, CO2 prices, availability factors, and so forth.
Thank you very much. Well, unfortunately, we are so much over time. Okay, is it a quick question?
Yeah, it's a quick question. Yes.
Okay, then let's take that last one.
My name is Nikolai, and my question to Kalev Kallemets. I'm a member of Mardu City Council, and I'm a head of opposition in Mardu City. Mardu City is a quite small city near the Tallinn. It's a harbor city, and it's mostly Russian-speaking minority city. And you say in your presentation, your speech, that Russian-speaking minority is more pessimistic to nuclear power in Estonia. It's according to researchers. And what I can see personally is that there are much less information in Russian language in Estonian newspapers than in Estonian language. And I also personally and my colleagues in Mardu City Council never didn't see Fermi Energy or any government's representatives in our city. That's why we invite you to the city to just to explain to the people what is the nuclear power. And that's my question. What you can do is for better information, for the better information of the people, Russian-speaking minority people in Estonia, because, for example, for Mardu City, we still have support for the people who was members of liquidator catastrophe in Chernobyl, and a lot of people from who was working in Chernobyl are living in local cities. That's how you can probably you need to meet more with the people to explain that the new technologies is more safety than the old technologies, Soviet Union technologies. Probably you can explain how you are going to decide this question and special questions of information in Russian language in Estonian newspapers. Thank you.
Very briefly, very briefly, please.
We will be coming to Mardu.
Okay.
Soon, and we have several people working in Fermi Energia that are whose mother tongue is Russian language. We just last week hired Andrei Kornovsky, and we have a construction engineer is Albert Kopiev. So, and we are gonna hire more people with Russian background for sure. Let's say Russian Estonian background. And so Estonia is to that extent bilingual, and we are going to communicate, and we are communicating with a lot in Russian language. Andres Ingerman can explain you more, but we will be coming to Mardu for sure, and we are cognizant that we are a bilingual country.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the questions. Thank you very much for the panelists. Applause, please. So.